Oui, bonjour. Nous allons continuer à suivre nos études sur l'économie. Et cette fois-ci, donc, le sujet se portera sur l'échange international. Allons-y. So the subject is international trade, and we want to first look at the reasons why countries trade with one another. Now, you're getting a very superficial and simple explanation in these 2 points, and there's quite a lot more that we could look at, but because this course does not focus on the development of the reasons, then we will just simply state, firstly, the main reason, of course, is to get goods and services that they cannot produce themselves because they do not have suitable resources. For example, why do we buy French wine? Why do we buy it off France? Because we can't produce French wine. Only French wine can be produced in France. New Zealand produces its own wine, but it's not French wine. Another reason is bananas, or another example is bananas, where bananas can be produced in New Zealand, but with great difficulty. The cost would be enormous to create suitable warm conditions for them to grow healthily. But of course, in some countries, they just grow on trees. They grow simply, and so the cost of production is very, very low. Which leads us to our second reason, that countries are more efficient producers of goods and some goods and services compared to others because they have natural or other advantages, and therefore they can produce the good more cheaply. So take New Zealand. There are plenty of countries who can produce milk or dairy products, but New Zealand has natural advantages, and nice climate, and plenty of rain, and the grass grows, especially in the North Island, and for example, the Waikato, not far from Auckland, south of Auckland. Farmers there can produce milk almost all year round because the grass never stops growing. Therefore, their costs are lower. And so that gives them a natural advantage. When one country is more efficient at producing a good than another country, economics says it's better to specialize in that good and import the other one that the country is not so efficient at producing. And in this way, output in both countries will increase and the price will be lower for everyone. So that's the basis of trade, but that's not where our focus is. Now, the second thing by way of introduction is the concept of price takers. And we have in this example here, we have on the left-hand side, we have what we will call the world dairy market. And that dairy market is made up of many, many suppliers. So New Zealand dairy producers are just one group of many, many sellers in the world market. And so when we look in the New Zealand dairy market, we find that the price that is actually set is set in the world market. And so New Zealand will sell at that price, at PW, the world price, set in the world market, where New Zealand sellers are one of many who supply milk in that market. The New Zealand market has to take that world price, and so it comes in, as you can see in this example, above the New Zealand domestic price. Now, this concept is important, of sellers being price takers, because we're going to take it into the next topic as well. So the price in both markets is set in the world market. In this way, the New Zealand market and producers have no control over the world price and must accept whatever that price is. The price is set in the world market by demand and supply, and those changes in demand and supply will determine the price in the New Zealand market. However, the New Zealand exporters benefit from trading in the world market, even though they sell less in the New Zealand market because the world price is higher than the local market. The resulting surplus is actually exported or sold in the world market at a higher price. Therefore, their total revenue increases. However, New Zealand consumers are going to be worse off because they pay a much higher price than they would have if New Zealand had not have traded. So their consumer surplus will decrease. So we're going to now study that in the next diagram. So our focus now zooms in on allocative efficiency. And we're going to compare changes in consumer surplus and producer surplus that will be affected by the international trade. And we're going to see some groups will lose, be worse off, and other groups will gain. But there will be a net gain in allocative efficiency or welfare, because the benefit to the groups that gain will be greater than the loss to the groups that are worse off. So let's have a look. Now we're going to focus on this net gain in efficiency or welfare as a result of international trade. So we have the world dairy market on the left hand side, and we have the New Zealand dairy market on the right hand side. And what we will see is that as New Zealand producers or sellers of dairy products sell in the world market, that there will be a net gain in efficiency. So we know as soon as our producers, New Zealand producers, agree to sell in the world market, they become price takers. In other words, PW is the price set in the world market by market forces of supply and demand in that market. But in New Zealand, because New Zealand sellers have chosen to sell in the world market, they have to take that price. They have no control over it. Is it a problem for them? Well, we'll see it's not. Even though quantity demanded will decrease in the New Zealand market because the price is higher now, quantity supplied will increase by New Zealand producers. And we now have a surplus, but that surplus is not a problem because that surplus will be exported to meet this demand here. Now, if demand increases for dairy products in the world market, well, we know there will be a shortage, and the shortage will be cleared by an increase in the price. So the world price will go up to PW dash. Again, is that a problem for New Zealand sellers who choose to sell in the world market? No. Even though they will sell less in New Zealand, that will be the quantity demanded in New Zealand, they will increase quantity supplied because they're getting higher prices in the world market, and the resulting surplus will be exported. Who loses? Well, we can see that consumer surplus decreases in New Zealand. That's where our focus is, in New Zealand. And so the prices increase, so consumers pay higher prices, so their surplus will decrease. But producers, on the other hand, New Zealand producers, well, you can see that this is how much they were getting before, but this is going to increase to there. In other words, because of the resulting increase in exports, the decrease in consumer surplus plus the increase shown in red producer surplus is the net gain in efficiency or welfare. You can see, in other words, another analysis would be to say that the decrease in consumer surplus, the loss as a result of this trade, increased trade, is actually less than the gain in producer surplus. So the net gain, the overall gain, is positive. And so efficiency or welfare will increase when we trade more in the world. This slide looks at the example of New Zealand as an importer, and New Zealand finds itself in the same situation. As soon as it decides to buy from the world, that it becomes a price taker. So if the price is PW set in the world market, New Zealand will take that price in New Zealand. New Zealand importers are price takers. They have no control over that price. They accept whatever it is set at. The amount imported is represented by the shortage in the New Zealand market, represented by that's quantity supplied, that's quantity demanded, so we have excess demand, but that's not a problem because that shortage not being met by the local producers will be met by trading or buying from the world market. Now let's say there is an increase in supply of oil in the world market. Well, that shift to the right of the supply curve will result in a lower price of oil. And the lower price, of course, will have an effect in the world oil market. Consumer surplus will increase because it's now cheaper to buy oil in the world market. But how will surpluses, producer and consumer surplus, change in New Zealand? Because that's where our focus is. Is international trade good for New Zealand? Is importing goods to New Zealand good? And good here means, is there a net gain in efficiency or welfare? Well, let's look. The right-hand graph. New Zealand imports increase, represented by the shortage, which is larger at the lower price because New Zealand producers are less willing to supply. They decrease quantity supply because they're getting lower prices. But again, that's not a problem because New Zealand will buy the shortage from the world, represented by M dash. So that's the amount imported. The shortage equals the amount imported. That represents, of course, the increase in consumer surplus. Consumers are buying more and they're paying a lower price. So consumer surplus in New Zealand will increase. They benefit. Consumers are happy to trade with the world when they import because they pay lower prices. So their consumer surplus increases. However, New Zealand producers are now producing less and they're getting lower prices. So that blue trapezium represents the decrease in producer surplus. But when you compare the net gain, the decrease in producer surplus compared to the increase in consumer surplus, we can see there is a net gain in welfare or efficiency. So international trade is good because the overall effect, even though some lose, in this case producers, when we import, New Zealand producers, consumers benefit a lot more.